You know who made it.
Hello again, and welcome to 3reate. I'm your host, Andrew Newman. 3reate features two types of episodes in a single feed, weekly and interviews. Each week, Nathan and I discuss current trends, our projects, and whatever else is on our minds. We'll also bring you fortnightly episodes where I interview folks across art, science, and technology, where we dive into their stories and get to the heart of how creativity drives them. Today we're joined by Austin. Austin, where does the podcast find you?
In Bend, Oregon. Yeah, I guess from our startup's position, fresh off a recent pivot and getting way more traction than we had before.
It's always a good spot to be in when people pay you for what you do.
Yeah. Maybe primary reason to have a startup.
Yeah. So what's your startup and what does it do?
Yeah. So Topsail is a sales execution platform. It simplifies the entire outreach motion into a single button click for a seller. So instead of having to generate a lead list, find their contact information, research them, and make sure you have a phone call or a phone number to call them, you just sit down, you hit the start button, and it's all done for you. You have everything done in front of you. You hit a call button. It connects you to the person you're trying to talk to, and then it runs the rest of the sequence for you. So your emails, your LinkedIn, your text messages all go through Topsails, but the big driving force is the phone call.
That's awesome. So it saves me a lot of work.
Yep. We're getting reports from people, and actually all the reporting that we do within the product, they're getting 3x productivity.
Wow.
Because they're just making phone calls and sending emails, and they're not doing the rest of the administrative work around it.
That's cool. Do you have a target industry? I know you're like early stage still, so are you just taking on people, or is there like a natural?
We have a very specific go-to-market strategy. So we're working with Sandler franchises. We work with the franchise to then help their customers adopt the training that they're getting from that Sandler franchise. So they have something called no pressure prospect calls, and they also have something called no pay time and pay time. So when you do the administrative work that goes into doing no pressure prospecting calls, that's no pay time. The industry average is about 70% of your time when you're doing outreach is administrative work. So you're doing unpaid work, and we eliminate all of that. So it just becomes paid time. And that's helping then the customer easily adopt the need to do this outreach because they have no excuses. Like when they meet on a weekly basis, they can't be like, I was trying to find a lead list, or I was doing this, or I was researching them. It's no, you were supposed to call 10 people every day this week, and you didn't, and you have no excuse. So now we're going to fix it.
Can you make this for task management so that I don't have an excuse to do my tasks?
The next one will be that.
Next pivot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I know I always joke like you're not in a startup until you pivoted at least once. Is this pivot one, or is this pivot more than one?
That is a good question. It's way more than one. I don't know how many technically we would have. So the team that we have on this project right now, most of the team has been working together for 5 years on a variety of ideas. I think this is probably pivot 3 within the last 2 years, I think. And then there was a period of time where we were realizing that we had a terrible idea, not because people didn't need it, but because they didn't want it.
Yeah.
And we probably spent like a month pivoting through ideas as we're trying to figure out the next step to take. So
yeah,
lost track.
That's a hard one. And I found that myself. I built basically a podcast app. And I decided I didn't want to do that. And the world didn't really need a different podcasting app, but the functionality was unique, leveraging AI with it. So I spun that down. My determination was, I think mostly, it wasn't my passion for sure. It was a fun project, but then it started to get some adoption, and it was actually technically profitable. I guess it was profitable, but I was making money on it. But it was also like not the thing that I really, really jumped out of bed. It was getting to be the point where all the issues that kind of were pushed aside were starting to crop up, and it was going to require some more work and that. But what kind of decisioning process did you find yourself going through to figure out like when to pivot, but then also what to pivot to? Because like in a startup, you don't have unlimited time either. You don't want to just be constantly pivoting all the time, because then you don't ever actually build anything. So what was the thesis for maybe the most recent pivot?
Yeah, so I think basically how we ended up in the pivot zone of moving around was we realized that our customer acquisition cost was just prohibitively high compared to what we could bring in. And we were getting customers here and there, but we weren't charging enough. And then our ICP was startups, so they didn't have the money.
Right.
And so it was something that we had converted a service into a digital product to make it more accessible. But the problem being now we have to educate people as to why they need this. It was branding. So it was, why do they need a brand for their company? And so that was basically what happened. We realized this is going to take too much effort for too little reward, and the math just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So we just started breaking pieces out of what we had built and seeing what people actually liked about it. And so that first part was people loved the analysis that it was doing on competition. So we started talking to marketers, and then they didn't like that, or they liked it, but then they wanted it a certain way. And we realized through the conversations, this is going to be another customer acquisition cost exceeding the amount we're going to make.
Yeah.
So then we started talking to salespeople about it randomly, and they're like, oh, this is wonderful. What about doing the research for the prospect that we're going to reach out to? And we're like, yeah. And just point it at that person, change the prompt a little bit, and then it's good to go. And then that started getting a lot of interest. And then we kept just kind of like tweaking based on the positive responses we were getting. And then we built something based on experiences I had had with like sellers and like their struggles with like administrative work that they have to do. And then we talked to one of the Sandler franchises, one of our anchor clients, and now actually their CEO is our CRO. So he's joined the team in the last month. And he was just like, I get the value. I understand it. Here's the problem. It's the UX. It's too complicated. Even though it's simpler than everything else they had, it's like, this thing needs to be a button.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was just the journey of just going out into the market and just throwing out prototypes, getting our faces kicked over and over, and then eventually having somebody be like, this is the last little tweak. And then all of a sudden it opened all these doors.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. And you got lucky too, like that you built a collection of features for a thing, and you were able to use some of those features in a different way or add on to them. So you were still solving similar problem set and then able to expand. And I guess for folks listening, if you're not familiar with cost of acquisition, it's the amount of money you have to spend to get a customer. No, it's cool. Yeah. I try to break stuff down and jargony things, but it's the amount of advertising you have to spend. It's the salespeople's time to try to get through a sales process. It's the support sometimes that you need to bring people in. If you have a product that you need to actually implement, it's the integration time or the project management. There's all those factors. And generally speaking, cost of acquisition is pretty high for almost everything. But then the question is, what is the lifetime value of a customer, or can you get them in on a product and then sell them additional features to make more money over time to get that money back that you spend, but then also get profitable. And at a big scale, that's really easy to do when you have thousands or tens of thousands or millions of customers. But when you're getting started out, you have a couple. It's a really hard problem to understand of what does that end result look like? What is that lifetime value? Because we've only had the customer for a couple of months, but we know we spent X amount and we're just not seeing that return. You can do some math to say, if we had 10,000 customers, it still doesn't really make sense. And then maybe you pivot, maybe you figure out a way to make it cheaper.
Yeah, and I think for us, the main measurement was the amount of education we had to do during the sales process. Yeah. It was just too much explaining why this was a value, showing them how they're going to get the ROI, showing them the impact of what it was going to do. And by the time we got that done, we needed to sell this for a $50,000 engagement, Jesus. Not a $100 a month subscription. Yeah. And the value within the subscription, which again became too much educational, is as you learn, you can pivot your brand and make sure to make adjustments and change your messaging. And if you spend what the industry standard is on a brand like Strategy Workshop, it's $50,000. So it's cost prohibitive to do it again. And we had created something that made it not cost prohibitive. That doesn't matter that it solved a problem, because as much as these people needed that solution, they didn't want it for themselves. And game over. At that point in time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how cool the idea is or if it's actually like creating value. If somebody's not going to acknowledge it, we don't have the money to run a campaign to change how people think about their brand.
Well, it's hard to scale that too. If it's you're doing something so different that you have to shift a perspective. Mm-hmm. That's more a marketing problem or maybe a little bit of a light sales process. But if it's massive process change or so different that people have a hard time understanding the value. You could be solving the right problem. You can be sending tremendous value, but it just sometimes doesn't make sense it's like a frustrating problem to have, because you're like, it actually works. And if you can only see the vision of why it works, you'll understand it. But it's a two-part problem. You have to solve the problem, but then you also have to make it easy for people to either adopt or understand. So that's also a cool kind of problem to have, right? You had a product that worked, it just didn't work the way that it needed to scale, or that you didn't want to put the time into to try to make it better either.
And I think fundamentally our ICP was other startups, and not to trash startup founders, but 90% are cosplaying as startup founders, and the 10% of us actually out here putting in the work and really building a business is significantly diluted. So when you have a bunch of people that you're reaching out to who aren't doing anything serious, they're not willing to invest time and money into their business, and they don't barely work on it themselves, you waste a lot of time chasing the wrong people. And that was a big problem for us.
Do you have any advice on that? So I get that a lot as well, that especially I work in AI, so there's a lot of people cosplaying AI in general. We could talk about that, but I have seen this. I don't even know what to term it, but it's I call it like the trust fund startup kid kind of thing, where it's like you're putting in some work, but you're not like the people who go to Bali and spend more time Instagramming their experience at Startup Island than like actually building value. Or what's your product? Oh, you have to explain it for 10 minutes. Okay, you probably don't have a product. Where can I see it? Oh, it's not built yet, or it's in development. Okay, that's part of the process, but you got to have customers, or at least you have to be available for people to either discover you or start to use it. So do you have any tips for identifying from your experience for startup cosplayers? I love that term. Maybe I'll title the episode that.
There we go.
How not to cosplay as a startup founder.
As long as we don't get labeled as the cosplayers, I think that's okay. I think it's dependent on what kind of startup you have, but I think there's the fun work and the ideation aspect of it. And if you find yourself mostly spending time there, I would say that's probably a red flag.
Yeah.
And then there's the stuff you don't want to do, like making cold calls and showing up to conferences and networking and putting yourself in extremely uncomfortable situations where you have to lay yourself out there to probably get like ridiculed and criticized. And if you're not in that situation, I would say you're either you nailed it and you got the perfect idea and you should run with that, and congratulations, because that's a very, very rare rarefied air. But yeah, that's probably a really bad sign. Like for us, I make 20 cold calls a day, and I'm like, I know we're onto something because I'm actually picking up the phone and calling people and having conversations, and they say, oh, I understand the value of this. Let's have a meeting. Let's try to get money into your guys' pockets. If you're not doing something along those lines, obviously you're not going to cold call if you're selling candy bar, like a new type of candy bar. But at the same time, maybe you are. Maybe you are calling every single Whole Foods in all of America to do that. And if you're not doing something like that,
grocery buyers for sure.
I
think that's I think really astute. I would also say if you're not talking to strangers just in general, like if you're just talking to your family or friends, or maybe you have some coworkers, or like you're at a co-working space and you're informal coworkers, and I would add too that if everyone's just giving you positive feedback, you're probably not onto something, because you're either not getting enough detail to where people see the edge cases or the potential problems. And I always talk about the mom test on the podcast. It's a fantastic book for how to find product market fit. And it's everything that people, I think, assume that a startup is, or like starting a business is like in that book. And it's just not really real. It's like, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I spent like 3 hours on a really, really dumb problem that I really shouldn't have to fix, but it's like, it needs to happen. Whereas if I was just cosplaying, I probably would have went to the pub or something.
Or just been like, oh, I don't need to do that. Or this isn't a problem. Like,
it's really easy to cast aside things. And like, I got a kind of a clever workaround that bought me a few months of time at least, but it is a problem that I'll have to get done.
Just like on the product market fit thing, this is something that for us we didn't have, and now I think we have, and we're still proving it out. I'm not going to get arrogant here and be like, now the product will sell itself and I don't have to do anything. But just every single day I have way more than I can possibly do that I have to get done. And when we've gotten to this point where it's, I'm not just like doing fun stuff or like just getting things done because I choose to. I only have time in the day right now to get things done that I have to get done, whether or not I want to do them. And it's like a great sign that things are working. It's I gotta fix this bug, or I gotta do this like phone call, or I gotta do this thing, and I just don't have a choice. And there's 10 things I'd rather do today, and I don't get to do any of them because I actually have people coming in, paying money, and like having conversations.
Yeah, or it's that there's a lot of those nice to have just go away. You're like, it should be a little bit better. It should be a little faster. It should be a better experience, but good enough. I need to move on and do all of these other things that are number one in value and have to keep moving to keep the ball rolling. Or like I always get hung up on all this stupid business bullshit that I have to do for like quarterly filings and like taxes and shit like that, where it's part of the job, but I don't really get off on sending my stuff to the state or organizing with the accountant to try to figure out how to get the revenue statements. Yeah. And then all the changing guidance and laws all the time with stuff. And it's like that. You got to be on top of that kind of stuff. And if you're listening and you have a startup and you don't know what I'm talking about, like you might want to re-examine a little bit on like maybe what you're doing.
Yeah. I had to learn how GER works, which is where you log all of your fundraising. And I had a week to figure it out because there's a deadline from when you get your first check to when you have to have it logged. And I procrastinated a little bit, so that's also why I had a week. But I was just freaking out. I was like, I don't know any of this. I have to teach myself in the next week because we don't have money to pay anyone else to do this. Yep. And it was like, there's a startup lesson. Like that's startup. Like you're a real startup if you're losing your shit because you don't have time to get something done and you have to teach yourself something brand new that you never wanted to learn in the first place. Yeah. But it's a requirement.
No, I agree with that 100%. And I learned like how easy it is to get a business license, but how hard it is to actually execute a business. Right. It takes 10 minutes. Like I didn't do Delaware Corp. I did a state corp, which has all sorts of pros and cons to it. But I then learned about all this other stuff I didn't know about that big companies have people for, or even medium-sized companies or small companies have an accountant or a tax person or a lawyer who does that. And I'm a bootstrap company. So it's like that's a trade-off decision of, do I pay the lawyer a couple grand to get it done, or do I spend a couple hours to try to figure out how to do it? And I don't know that there's a right answer there, to be honest. I think it really comes down to what all the details are. For me, it was like an obvious 2 hours to try to figure out the state filing system and make some mistakes along the way by not complying with reports that I was supposed to, and now we're good, but that's part of the learning process.
I think that's also part of it too, is you're allowed to make the mistakes. You just have to get the email or the letter from the state and be like, oh, and have your heart drop, but then be like, okay, but I'm going to go fix it. And then you just move forward. And it's just going to happen. I think if we're talking about, we alluded to use cases for AI before the call, being able to learn that stuff quicker because AI can start summarizing it. And don't take it as legal advice, but this can at least expedite the learning process, and then you can have it provide citations so you can go read the actual source data. But talk about an amazing tutor that's in your back pocket, and you can ask the dumbest possible questions and no one will be there to ridicule. That's not a good question. You're like, okay, AI knows and no one else knows that I asked the bad question.
That's a good point. I think you termed it earlier before we started recording. It's like a better Google, right? It's like we had search engines. You could mash in your search. You probably got some websites or you got close. With AI too, I think it's all about how you use it. So if you ask it to give me a business plan, it's going to give you some generic document about how to do a business plan that you could find in any MBA textbook or probably a million websites online. But if you say, I am filing for this type of corporation in this state, what do I need to do, or what are the forms, or what are the process, or what's the calendar of corporate events that I need to follow? Should I get a lawyer? In what instances do I want to get a tax attorney? Like at what point am I revenue? If you ask it more specific questions or give it more context, again, you can't necessarily trust that it's going to be right or it's done a thorough job, but it can take away 80% of what, because I'm in my, I think, third startup. The first time I did this, which was dinosaurs were still roaming the earth, but internet wasn't even great. It was like how to get a company started was like go to the library and ask the librarian, like, where's the big book of government documents that I need to pull up whatever form. write it on paper. Maybe I think you could scan it. It wasn't that long ago, but like even the state website didn't really have the business filing stuff. It was all still analog process. With AI, I know does your company employ AI in the product?
Yeah. So we primarily use it as like an orchestration layer.
Mm-hmm.
So the end user actually never ends up using AI. They only use outputs from the AI. So it does data validation as well as like research. And then we might have it do some, as we aggregate successful sequences and how people are reaching out and are looking to do some analysis, we might have it start like running some analysis and providing feedback to the reporting mechanisms that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But the user will never, ever get the opportunity to write a prompt or click a button to have AI run or have any sort of direct interface with it. I like to think of it as it should be almost like as Node.js or something in your tech stack. It's hidden, it's doing its job, and you're never going to know. Like we could just not tell people it has AI, and we don't. I don't actually never bring it up when we're talking to like potential customers.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have people ask you about it? Because like it's in the zeitgeist, right? I use the literal mom tester when my mom is like sending me articles about, oh, have you heard of this Anthropic company? Yeah, mom, I know a thing or two about it.
It comes up sometimes just because they're curious, and I think we do talk to some groups where we've been tasked to implement AI at our company. So is AI a part of what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
But I never bring it up when I make a cold call. I never write it in any of my emails. I just don't talk about it, except when I'm denigrating it and telling people how it's not a good, useful tool for sales. And especially with AI SDRs, those are going to fundamentally shift how we sell, and not as the intended consequence of creating an AI SDR, but actually as an unintended consequence. And the result will be phone calls will be more powerful than ever.
Yeah.
Because the only way that an AI SDR can reach out to somebody is there's 3 prerequisites. 1, it has to be text only. 2 is if it makes a phone call, it has to preemptively, before you actually talk to the AI, announce that it's an AI bot. And so who's going to pick up a random phone number and have it go, hey, you're going to either be recorded or you're going to talk to AI and listen? No, I'm hanging up immediately. Or 3, you're non-compliant with the TCPA, and that means every single time the AASDR picks up the phone, it's a $500 violation if you get caught. So you might not get caught for a little bit, but once you do, your business is going under because it's going to cost $500,000 to $1 million because it's going to make so many calls. Isn't that the whole value of an AI SDR? Right. And so that's the only time I talk about AI with our product, is to make fun of the AI SDRs and talk about why they need to do it themselves instead.
100%. And I rag on the big 3 AI companies quite a bit. One of them is very good at hype cycle bullshit to raise money.
Yeah.
The other 2 are a little bit more real. I don't even like to say their names I don't like to give them credit or.
Okay, I won't. Yeah. I won't drop any names then.
I think everybody knows who I'm talking about. But I think the thesis that you have is 100% the best way to use AI is to not. It's so funny because generative AI, the idea behind that is it's going to replace all human communications. You're going to generate it. I don't know. I never want to say never, but in my experience and in knowing, what I know, if it does generate something quote unquote good, you probably don't know enough about what you're doing to know how bad it is.
Yeah.
But it is really good at data validation or being able to autonomously go collect stuff, give it to a human to say, hey, here's what I found. Is this actually what you think it is? Or I don't know if this is right, but maybe this is the right contact information for this person, or maybe this company is doing this thing.
Yeah. Or, hey, here are 3 to 4 common iterations of this person's potential email address.
Yeah.
I'm going to generate those for 100 of them and then use that to send it to hunter.io and have it validate which one is the correct one.
Yeah.
That is an extremely cumbersome process that you could probably also write some basic code to have it do these determinations, but then it becomes extremely easy to then just have AI quickly do it for you instead. And that was like one of the reasons we were able to pivot so much with what we had, is that a lot of our underlying structure had AI involved for a lot of the delivery process, like the value delivery.
Yep.
So it became much easier to change what is delivering the value
Right.
because it was just simply updating some English that I could do instead of having to get somebody rewriting part of our program.
Right, like a service layer or something like that. That's a really, really interesting point for folks. So when you say I could write it in English, are you coding your product? Are you selling your product? Well, I guess maybe what's your role? We should probably start with that, huh?
Oh gosh. What isn't my role? I think maybe that's also how you know you're part of a startup.
You passed.
Yeah. Every single day I do my sales obligations, I do my customer support obligations, and then I code with the remaining time I can find.
Yeah.
And then we're completely using AI for all of our coding, and then just putting quality assurance in, either with have an AI council where multiple AIs are checking the work, or frankly just deploying it and then going and seeing what went wrong and then debugging it, and just having a very brash, not deliberate approach to just getting things done. I have every single time I push like a serious update before releasing it to clients, but like doing it in the dev environment, I would just tell myself, it's like, all right, there's only one way through, or there's only one way and it's through at this point. And I just know I'm going to have tons of bugs. But for a startup that doesn't have anyone full time on staff that codes really codes, we're able to have a product in the market with paying customers and not have to hire an engineering team yet, which is, it's valuable when you have no money at a startup to be able to do that.
No kidding. Would you say that it's vibe coded?
I guess. Yeah. I don't know what that word means, and I don't know like it's vibe coded from the sense that most of it's all basically written by AI. So I think it checks that box of offense. Yeah. I'm also, there's a lot of me trusting that the AI did certain things right because it's above my technical knowledge, like my understanding. But I'm definitely doing all the architecture myself. Like I'm like, hey, here are the collections that we're going to have. Here's how our database is going to interact. Here are the things that we need to make sure that it's going to be able to do in the end. Oh, and then being able to point like, hey, we have this sequencing engine that does this thing that then I need to create a mirrored task so that I can turn off and on whether or not it gets put into a CRM. And then it also needs to be optimized so that things load faster on the page, and being able to really connect the dots on exactly what we're doing instead of just being like, just make it go faster, which I think is a little bit more of the vibe coding ethos than I'm going to sit down and like actually look at every single piece of like the product and then stitch it together and give very specific directions. I just can't code it myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like, I agree with the whole vibe code thing. I have a friend who is really not technical at all. Wouldn't describe himself that way either, I don't think. And he's asking me a lot of stuff about AI a lot. And he's doing not quite to your level of I don't know if I call it vibe coding, but I'll use that for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
But he's using it more for, instead of having internal applications being built for his company, like he's building up like where instead of using something like Zapier to tie stuff together in this kind of like low code environment, he's building effectively internal applications to do shit. Yeah. And it's a lot of back and forth with AI. It's a lot of trial and error. And I would say like, for me, that's probably really vibe coded because he might know some code, but probably not. And he's using English as his primary programming language. Yeah. Whereas what I think I heard you say, and I think this is definitely like where I would fall in as well, is I'm using AI to do the monotonous work, the actual language and instruction and that kind of thing. And I'll turf it to do something. It'll generate some code. I'll either integrate it or it'll just do the thing that I need. I do give it a look over. I do know, and I've learned to code in the past. I learned Visual Basic back in the day. I did Bash programming for a little bit, and then I did like my first, I think, real sit down with code was Basic, and I didn't really do much of anything until Visual Basic came out. And it's like, oh, you can see what it's doing and make a little web app back in the day. Nice. That's cool. I learned C. That was another one where it was like, so my engineering chops, I would say, is definitely back end, half stack. Like I can do UI bullshit, but I hate it. I hate it. I have mad respect for people who can do that really well or enjoy it. I'm just not that person. But I also think, and I'm sure if it's talking about front end person, they tell me that's harder. But I'd say like the back end stuff's still the hard part. It's still getting the architecture like you can build companies on really basic stuff or leveraging cloud things, but the value really comes down to really understanding the core problem and getting that done. And if that's you talking to AI a million times or hiring a programmer who can do that in a couple hours, though, I don't think that it matters anymore. And I think with AI specifically, I feel like it's become politicized anymore, where people are like, there's an environmental impact, but there's an environmental impact to driving your car. There's an environmental buying shit on Amazon and having it delivered to you. I don't think we need to build nuclear power plants to power AI, but like every technology, there's pros and cons here. And I think this one actually has the ability to really push stuff forward in ways that we haven't seen. I don't think it's going to replace humanity. I don't think it's going to replace our intelligence. But I'm talking to a guy who can't code, but has a business that's running with customers. So
it's awesome. I gotta say real quick on the whole climate thing. It's such like a bad. My next startup is going to be all about soil restoration. I care deeply about the climate. I think we're headed in the wrong direction as a species. And I think pretending that AI is the problem here and is like the funniest thing I've heard. And then this whole power consumption thing, it's like power consumption is not like a net zero game. It's not like one of these things where we can't create more solar panels. Maybe AI can come up with a way to help us structure better ways to create clean energy. I just think I hate that argument so much. So I'm glad that you pointed out and made fun of it, because it drives me up the wall when people say it, like when people make arguments about that kind of stuff, because it's not holistic. It's like trying to pick apart one tiny aspect of it. And but you're not thinking about how this fits into a greater vision of how everything can happen. And if we have less people driving to jobs that they hate because AI is doing the manual work, the environmental impact could be significantly different. I'm going to rant a little bit further on this one, because then we can start putting people into higher levels of the Maslow's hierarchy, and then you can't actually care about the environment when all you care about is food. So if we can start figuring out how to get people past that first layer, they can actually start buying products that are more environmentally conscious. They can start doing restorative work in like the environment around them, planting more trees, putting health into soil, like a bunch of the stuff. So will that happen? I have no idea, but I just don't think it's like AI is bad for the climate is just a ridiculous like statement in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think we can build AI data centers and systems responsibly.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it's an all. I don't think we have to go fire up a bunch of coal power plants to have AI. And I feel like a lot of the macro political arguments tended to be these weird binary constructs where it's like, there's only two things we can do and it's AI or no AI. And I'm like, no, there's always, and the thing I think people don't really understand either is that if you own a data center, you're an owner or you're an operator of a data center, you don't want to be sucking down a bunch of electrons because there's a real cost to that. And you have to cool the servers, you have to heat shit sometimes too. And like, you have to maintain the ability to run them if the grid goes down, all this kind of stuff that people don't think about. So there's a really, really high incentive there to make computers run faster with less electricity, to make AI models that are more efficient or smaller or more specific so that they don't run. So like we are in early days. Training a model, I don't think is ever going to be not energy intensive because it's like the scale of the big three companies is mind boggling.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually using it went from about 2 years ago when ChatGPT 3 kind of came out, 2.5, 3 years ago, pretty slow, crappy. You could, and then run Llama 1 came out somewhere around a couple years ago, super crappy, ran like absolute dog shit, barely worked on like consumer hardware, even on like a big server farm of GPUs didn't work really well. Now I can run Llama 3 or ChatGPT released an open source model that I can run on my laptop pretty well. It's not great experience, but it works. I have a really big, powerful laptop, but it's like not that big and powerful compared to a data center, which is where this stuff was like 2 or 3 years ago. So I think it's like everything else in technology where a lot of people have opinions that don't know what they're talking about, but it's also a lot of the abstraction is abstract enough that people don't even have an idea of what's going on or know that there's another there, to use that quote. But I also like I don't want to burn a bunch of electrons to make fart jokes funnier, but there's also real utility here. And I think that's why I don't mention he who shall not be named, because I think he's doing the biggest disservice to the entire industry by making all these crazy claims that we're going to have AI Jesus in 5 years and no one's going to ever work again. That's insane. Maybe someday we'll have machine intelligence that will replace all of humanity doing tasks. Like I doubt it's going to be in my lifetime.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know where it's going to go. I won't pretend to know that, but I think anyone that thinks they have a very clear idea, they might be right, but they don't. It's just because everyone has their different ideas, and somebody who's very confident will eventually have been the one that was correct. Only because if you throw enough things at the wall, something's going to stick. It's the monkeys writing Shakespeare. Because I think one of the things that is unintentionally happening will start coming out is actually like more of a decentralization of organizations and like the ability to create more versions of the same type of software that's solving the same problem, but having it be so highly opinionated that it perfectly fits the need of exactly whoever you're building it for. Like your buddy who's writing these ad hoc internal applications, like that's amazing. He's going to be able to build that, but then he could even start like going, wait a second, maybe there's 2,000 businesses out there that need this same set of applications I just built. It's a super limited market cap, but I can do this all by myself. So I can still make myself a lifestyle business. Or, you have like your CRMs that can do everything, but because the people who work at those organizations can't use them, they can do nothing.
So or you have to have an administrator and beg for permission. And that's kind of the path y'all took with your product, was like, let's just get that administrative layer out and make those choices and just make it easy. And I love that you brought up the entrepreneurial aspect, because this idea that anybody can be a software entrepreneur is, I think, real for the first time in my lifetime. Like there are services where you can quote unquote vibe code an app, deploy it to a server, make it publicly accessible in a few steps or like some clicks. You don't really need to know anything. Will that scale and make you millions of dollars? Probably not, but will that get you maybe your first paying customers or like enough validation where you can quit your job and learn the skills or hire somebody to come in and build it? 100%. Like the promise of technology has been that, right? That you'll have your personal computer and you'll have your personal database at work and it'll give you all this efficiency. And that never really materialized because writing code is hard and it's time consuming and it's not everybody's forte. But the AI has gotten so good now where if you really wanted your own custom task app that you and your partner use at home to do grocery delivery or whatever, you could do that. Is that going to make you millions of dollars? Maybe not. You could share that. Maybe you could sell it to some other people, and the little bit of money you make from your app pays for the cost of the hosting for it, or you can grow it, or you get people asking you for stuff. Getting customer pull is the best product market validation of, hey, could it do this?
Yeah.
Well, I would, this would save me much more time if it did this, right? And then you figure out if you want to implement that or not.
And it's very specific. Like this is 5 years ago, we had an idea with the same group of people. It's been a long journey, but like we had a different idea in the legal industry for an operations tool, fixed a very specific like issue that was happening, but that issue was causing millions of dollars of loss every year. So we were like, okay, we have something here. We can charge a ton for it. We started working with like a development agency. Like they gave us like the groundwork on how we could make it. And they're like, look, if we're going to finish making this thing, it's going to cost $150,000. And we validated it with a couple of people and like, yeah, that's what it's going to cost. And it's okay, cool. We don't have $150,000 in the bank. So how do we get to the next step? And we had to basically start selling something that wasn't built yet, which is also a great way to validate a concept, but can also make it difficult to take that next step when you have a chicken or egg moment, as we got like a list of companies that were interested, but no one was going to give us the money before it was built. And we couldn't get the money to then build it. So we were stuck. And then we just weren't good enough at the sales process and then working with investors to be like, look, we have these people lined up. They've signed these like letters of intent. Like we need the money. We got stuck there. If we had the technology, like if we had the AI coding that we have today back then, I would have just built it. And then we would have started our business and we wouldn't have got stuck at this chicken or egg moment. And that's why we have this product. Like I didn't set out to code it. It was just what needed to be done. And it was like, all right, this needs to be done. It's going to get done. AI made it accessible for me. And then we were able to continue to move forward. Is our long-term sustainable strategy to have me being like the primary developer? No, not at all. But it certainly got us to this point, and it'll get us to the point where we can actually have enough money coming in where we can get somebody who can use AI and is way more intelligent about how they leverage it. Shoot, I'll take the vibe code name if it gets us to the ability to then be able to take the next steps and get like a real CTO instead of me, I'll say it, cosplaying as a CTO at this point.
No, but you hit another really good point in that like early prototype validation. So I think I used to be on an internal tools team once upon a time and building internal tools for the enterprise. And that's been like an IT problem for as long as computers have been around, is you have all these problems the business needs to do. No one's technical enough or really wants to take the time. They want to just do their job, but like they can benefit from technology, and it just never gets done, or you have to have this internal bidding process and all this stuff. Whereas AI has now made it where, like, again, my buddy is like basically the internal app team. And does that mean he's going to be that forever? Probably not, but he can get enough. Either he can use AI to get enough of the stuff done to make it valuable, and then he's done. You move on to another problem. Or you can show the value, and then you as a company or a person can choose to invest in that. And I think that's the biggest thing with AI that I've seen, is the ability to get a prototype out the door and get validation is faster than it's ever been. The ability to iterate features out or change things has been used to take teams. You'd have to go get a designer, UX person to go talk to your customers and feed that through a process. A product manager sitting there trying to balance all this other shit, and then thing goes down and you lose 2 weeks to try to fix it, and then everything gets balled up. Whereas now you can push stuff out a lot faster, and I think you can take much smaller swings. So if anybody's ever chopped like a tree with an axe, you don't just one hit and it's down, unless I guess it's a tiny tree. You sit there and you do probably thousands of chips at the tree, and then eventually the tree will succumb to gravity and fall over. The old mantra of software building was like, let's take a big old chainsaw and just swing through it, and if we hit the wrong tree, oops. Whereas now you can take all these little chips and you can make all these little iterations and try much smaller things, easier to roll back. You don't have to have a massive design burn that you did. I don't think in a real product or in a real company, those things change. I think you're still going to need at some point to have an engineering team to build the app at once you hit a certain scale, or you need to grow in a certain way. But that goalpost is also moving further and farther away every day. That every new development that you're like, I can't deploy this, or it's too complicated, and then AI the company will make an update, or someone will figure out a better way to deploy stuff, and then you maybe got another couple months of you doing it. So I still don't think we're ever going to be in a reality in the near future where you'll be able to run a massive software company with AI vibe coders. But I think a lot of the value that you can drive that is very real is also accomplishable with AI. And again, you probably don't want to be $1 billion company. That's a whole different level of headache, but make enough money for you and everyone working and to be able to grow in a sustainable way is like a business dream.
Yeah, totally. And I think you wouldn't want the AI vibe coders for a variety of reasons, at least building the product directly, but hire 10 of them and have them constantly out in the market, talking to your customers, building little vibe coded applications or features or like little tiny things, and then being able to actually have real feedback with a real product in the market that isn't perfect and is buggy and won't scale. But now you've gone out and you've fixed that whole process. And if product managers are behaving the same way they do today in 5 years, that as like a discipline should either disappear or they've completely fumbled, because there's just no reason to not vibe code like a quick, hey, our customers have said they wanted this thing because I've been talking to them. I vibe coded this thing. I let them use it for a week. Here's their feedback. Now you, real coder, make this thing a reality, but at least we're not wasting your time building something that isn't going to be usable. Yeah.
And that's the big one too, is it's like AI still doesn't do very good at architecture and engineering principle, but it's getting better. But yeah, I've used this with teams too, and what I've started to find, and in talking with folks as well, that the bottleneck is that a lot of teams within existing businesses are just not ready for this. It reminds me of the IT world back in the day where you had to get the IT permission to install the software. You had to get the IT permission to get the service. a lot of SaaS companies have gone around that with the credit card model, where if you put in even your own credit card at work and you're like, hey, I'm using the software, and you have to adopt it. That moment I don't think has happened yet in most mature companies or most mature enterprises, in that people will do that and then the internal teams don't know how to deal with that, or they don't think it's credible, or they ignore it because they're like, well, it wasn't my idea. I don't know why it's like people tend to make things way harder than they need to be once they've asserted a fiefdom of power and control. And it's a weirdly human thing, but I suppose you're small enough where you probably haven't entered that yet, but do you see a moment where you add more people to your team now, or do you think you have the capacity, even with everything going on with the AI going, to keep moving?
I don't know. We'll definitely grow a lot slower, team size. The team size will grow significantly slower than we would even a couple of years ago need to do that. And it's actually really nice because, like, to your point of, you get these full-blown bloated teams in these big organizations and all of a sudden they're not nimble.
Yeah.
Right now, the distance between the person who's making the prospecting call, talking to strangers, supporting customers, and writing the code is zero. I'm able to have this complete pulse on exactly what people are saying. I can tell them exactly if we can or can't build something, and I don't have to worry about, do I have to get this approved by the product manager or the engineering team? I'm going to do it. And so the value of that is more important to me than anything else, which is when we hire on this, we have somebody in the ranks that's going to come in and be a real CTO who really knows how to code. But he and I have worked together and we have a really good communication strategy, and we just can talk through things really easily. And I don't want 3 more engineers. If we don't need it, I don't want it. Like, I want it to be me and him. He can do the technical stuff. He hates UI UX, so I'll just keep having that as like a passion because it's fun.
You have a sickness.
I just like being able to change something and then watch it like change on the screen. It's very simplistic. It's not like I'm not great at it, but it's cool being like, oh, just tweak like some CSS and then all of a sudden the screen looks different. I don't know why that amuses me so much.
Yeah. It's because you have a sickness.
Yeah, I'll take it. But I think, I'd almost think to some degree it'd be bad for our growth and bad for our nimbleness to bring on. If our team ever gets bigger than 20 people, I think something went wrong. And like with the philosophy we have on how the product's going to administer itself, we don't really need to take on more people. Like our biggest team will definitely be our sales team.
Yeah.
And then we'll have them basically be account manager, or they'll do a full cycle AE to account manager. And then they'll be administrating by setting up the ICP, but that should be part of our onboarding process and a part of their account management responsibility. They'll run QBRs, which is basically going to be us going, here's the data, how do you want us to tweak any of the sequences or automations, which again, you could say is administration, but really to me, that's sales.
Yeah.
We're just going in, we're making sure they're not going to churn. And I've built enough of this product and it's enough to this point where it needs to be now that it's only going to be a matter of scaling. And I just think we just don't need more people for that. And
I would agree. You will start to then hit the compliance legal problems or the customer support. Like AI does not solve customer support. I was on with Google this morning. Google, I'm coming for you again.
Yeah.
With their AI bot, and it just totally it was trying to give me help and not support. Like I tried all the help. I read all the docs. I asked people that I know who do this all day long. I asked people I'm working with. We can't figure out what the hell's going on, and I need support. And there's a very different problem set of getting someone help and getting someone support. But at the same time, maybe that's one person instead of a team of 10 people. Or your salespeople can do some of that, and then maybe they escalate to you. You hit on it a little bit earlier, but I think AI, the more and more AI we get, I'm sure you get this shit all the time. I get all this stuff on outbound shit on LinkedIn, and the podcast I get stuff all the time with random people. Like they clearly scraped like an episode description, and then they hard pivot in the next paragraph to selling me why I should have this guest on the podcast or not. The funny thing with the podcasting specifically is if you go to the website for the podcast, be a guest is a big old button on there. That doesn't mean you're going to be on, but you could, it's a very simple Google form. Everybody who's on the podcast fills it out. It's just, who are you? I agree to be on the podcast. Here's some things I kind of want to talk about. some other basic collateral stuff. I try to keep it pretty simple, but it's like I want to be accessible. I don't ever want to be in the position with this where it's like, how do I get on there? I have someone who you should talk to. Great, go to the website.
Yeah.
So simple. But I get all this shit on LinkedIn and email and all these companies that just spam AI crap. And I've threatened, I think, many times now to come up with an AI to just with them. Because I'm so sick and tired of it. It's like, this has always been a problem as far as the internet's gone, because it doesn't cost anything other than time. And people think that's job. They're cosplaying as sales reps because they're like sending a million emails that no one actually responds to. What's your success rate? 0. So I think, like we were talking a little bit before too, but I think any sort of human interaction is going to become like astronomically more valuable in the era of AI. Are you seeing that? And like for your salespeople, your tool is really, how do I get a person in front of another person more efficiently, and not how do I get AI or my product or my sales pipeline in front, right? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, we're leave it to the team that used to do branding. Like we're calling it like conversational led sales.
Yeah.
And like you can do a bunch of different outreach activities. So you can use it for LinkedIn and like connection requests or sending messages, all manually done. LinkedIn, if you're listening, we're not doing any automations and having it send emails and everything. But the cornerstone is making sure people are getting on the phone calls with everything done. And so like high focus on human in the loop. Like it's the human that needs to connect with the other human, and we're going to have all of that BS work that was slowing you down automated away, and AI is going to help with that part. But we're not going to replace you, and we're not going to tell you, here's what you should say to this person. We're going to give you the information, and then you're going to figure out how to connect with that person.
I love that so much.
Yeah, because like to your point on like the customer support, like that's bad for that brand. That's bad for that company. And you're giving them they gave you the middle finger and said, we don't care enough about your business. Here's an AI bot that's super scalable and cheap. And oh, by the way, we know it's super scalable and cheap because that's what we talk about all the time when we talk about AI. And from everything from sales to customer support to when you're talking to the account manager to get renewed to providing voice of the customer feedback, like, I think, sure, there's times where AI can physically or like can do it and execute, but I think it's totally short-sighted. And I think the idea that we're going to end up in a world where the AI is so good that you won't be able to tell the difference, I don't think that matters. Because I'm going to get pissed if you try to trick me into thinking that I was talking to a person. And maybe Gen Zers will start taking over businesses and start being cool with it. I don't know. I don't talk to Gen Z very often, but I don't think anyone that's actually head of business right now who's making economic decisions for that business is going to want this idea that this other company doesn't care enough about your company to put a human on it. Now, is that human augmented by AI and help like getting way more done? Absolutely, and they should be. But I think that's going to be like the big differentiators as people shove more into this AI world with certain use cases. Like you said, I think that nails it perfectly on the head. It's the value of the human interaction is going to increase just exponentially against that change.
I've always called it augmentation, not automation, because like you can automate a lot of the shit people have to do, but if you're able to fully automate what a person does, it's probably not valuable, or it's not hard. And if it's not hard, I would argue it's probably not valuable. You might have an emotional attachment to it. That's a whole different question, but it's probably not valuable. So that stuff's okay to go away, but these claims of it's going to take everyone's job, I guess if your job's not valuable, and I do think the human relationship piece of every job or your ability to work, like humans, the number one skill that we have as humans is we can work together as a team, and if we do that, we literally go to the moon, literally leave the planet, send some other humans on a team to another body off of the planet and back again. We can do probably anything. We also have a really hard time getting together to work as a team, but that's like a whole other thing, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast for sure.
No, but I think that's going to be more important than ever. And a lot of technologies have claimed this, right? Like the Adam Smith's Capital, we're all going to have perpetual robot or perpetual motion machines harvesting our crops so that we can enjoy the fruits of the machine labor. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I just think he was 100 years early on that idea.
Yeah.
But who wants to really be in the field picking crops? Like if you want to have a garden, sure. That's very different than 8 hours a day, 52 weeks out of the year doing crop stuff. I don't really think there's very many people in the world who love that. And if we can get rid of that job and have a robot with AI do it, great. Yeah. Those people get to do something else.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing people keep, again, you've automated the information sleuthing part of sales process so that I literally just get my list of things to do and I can take actions all day long. I don't have to get prepped for the action. Or if there is prep for the action, a bulk of that prep is done and I just make the decision and the determination. And that's the magic moment, I think, for AI. I always like to ask folks, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
Oh God, no, I don't think so. I can't think of anything.
Perfect interviewer. No AI going to take my job.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. A 10 out of 10. That was great.
And then I do to ask as well, is there anything that you're doing when you're not working? And it could be working, but anything you're reading or watching or consuming that you want to get the word out on for other people that might be interested? It could be about this. It could be something totally unrelated.
People should start looking into soil restoration.
I love it. What about that specifically for folks who might not know what that means?
Yeah. So we've basically been destroying the health of our soil by trying to strip out everything from it because it was convenient at the time to put like fertilizers and then kill it with all these different pesticides. And the big thing here is that it solves a ton by just focusing on this. So everything from stronger crop yields to more nutritious food to carbon sequestration to just the health of our planet is all directly tied into like soil. And so if we can, and the thing that's crazy is that it's not even like we have to figure out how to do it. Yeah. We know how to do it. We just have to start deciding as a society we need to invest in making these changes. It's actually cheaper than buying fertilizer. It just the big problem, and it is a big problem, is that it's a process. And so for a farmer that is trying to transition from the industrialized agriculture that we have currently to like a restorative, regenerative approach, it just takes multiple years. And if you have a mistake along the way, these farmers are living off razor thin margins. Yeah. It's just too much of a risk, even though the other side of it's even better. And this is so silly because we just take legislative action. We give these people grants to transfer over and then there we go. Or like even if you can just start doing it with plots of land and start proving it out, and then if you can go to like some farmers and give us like the back lot or give us like an acre, and if we can make that acre significantly more productive, aren't you going to do the rest of your farm? And that solves so much. We're eating less nutritious food. People have bad diets. It gets them more nutritious food. It's more filling. It'll help with like the obesity epidemic. It'll start sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere. And when we talk about AI consuming so much energy, energy consumption isn't bad in of itself. It's bad when it produces too much carbon that then changes the face of our planet. But then if we can have restored fields that are sequestering that carbon, we can actually offset a lot of that. I don't know. It just seems like the most obvious, simple way to really like to start fighting climate while also getting a ton of other benefits. And I think it just needs some help. Some awareness. I think awareness is a big part of it for sure.
Yeah, no, the soil thing's really fascinating. After the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, we really invested as a society in conservation practices and less destructive farming techniques. And that seemingly went away somewhere. I don't know if that was like in the 50s or the 60s with the heavy fertilization, getting more crop yields by genetically engineering seeds and stuff. And like, there's pros and cons to, I think, all the approaches. But to your point, it's like you literally are what you eat.
Yeah,
literally, right? The apple that you eat gets broken down by your body into different nutrients to build better hair and skin and fight cancer and all this kind of stuff. So I agree that it's always frustrating to me to find humans will spend so much time, effort, and energy on things that are so big, complex. What if we got a magic pill that makes you, or Ozempic's a great example, a magic injection that will remove all your body fat? What if you just had healthy food? And a lot of people don't have access to that, and it's not necessarily their fault. But what if you could just go to the corner store or walk within a mile and have real food available that was nutritious for you?
I think it's an atrocity. Like, and I know that's a big word for something like being able to go and get an apple from a corner store, but it's one of those perversions that's happened as we've kind of like had so much success, like with urbanization and being able to move so much progress and modernity through the rest of the world. But walking, getting exercise, going outside, fresh air, sun on your skin, like going and getting like a nutritious, like actually has nutrient content, like vegetable or produce. Like it's such like first degree, like super hippie stuff, but it also is like you read any studies about just like exercise, clean diet, that's good for you for more than just are you fat or not, but also your mental health.
Yep.
And we have like all these mental health
attitude.
issues.
100. I'll binge every once in a while, and I always regret it the next day because I feel like shit, and I'm slower, and I'm sluggish, and I don't think as good, and I'm probably more irritable. I like to think I'm always irritable, but I tend to be more irritable when I eat crappier food. But I really appreciate it. I love just ending on those things, but I have seen the things in the background there. I know we're on an audio podcast, but do you want to talk about those at all, or do you want to leave them anonymous?
Oh, it's a guitar, electric guitar, electric bass. I got an accordion over there. I got a drum set over here. I got a jazz flute laying around somewhere. When I finally am no longer both the seller, the customer support, and the coder, I will get back to making. My friends and I have an Anchorman tribute band where we make songs that are about the movie Anchorman.
That's cool. So, are you playing anytime soon, or are you on hiatus until you hire more AI?
We're on hiatus until we hire more AI. Also, they have kids, and that also is a hiatus we're also on.
Yeah, but they tend to do that.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, it's one day we'll release that album, and we'll just tour around to dive bars that let us get up on stage.
I love that. I've had a lot of fun on those nights where people get up and they just play. Maybe they're not the best musician, but they're playing decent music. They're having fun. No one's there to go see the big concert, and it's a good time. So.
Yeah,
I love that you're well-rounded in your food, music, and technology endeavors.
Yeah, it doesn't feel well-rounded at the moment because it's a startup. But again, if you're not cosplaying at startups, that's probably how I feel. Awesome.
Thanks again for taking the time, and I'd love to have you back on when you get to your next AI hire.
Yeah. Or if we get a cool milestone, I'll let you know.
You can find us at 3reate.com. It's like the word create, but with a 3 instead of the C. As always, we encourage you to listen, watch, do. We'll see you next time. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/3reate or at ko-fi.com/3reate. Thanks for listening.